and I am so pleased to welcome you to my show in exhibition at the Cantor Gallery in the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I want to give you an opportunity to walk with me as we go around the installation, and you can get a chance to see my fantastical world of the reds and the grays. The reds and the grays are living in a sci-fi universe that I've created, and I've used a lot of different materials to create this world. And I'm really excited to share with you all the different ways that I've introduced the characters for you to get to know, maybe like, maybe not like, but to think about as we go around the show. Welcome. As we walk around the gallery, one of the first things you might notice is my all over again clock. It's a kinetic clock and a book all in one. I got the idea from an 18th century tall case clock that played tunes. And because this is unusual that this particular clock, which is the Goddard clock, played so many, I wanted to create a series of song lyrics that would be, in theory, the tunes that this clock would play. Now this clock, I want to demonstrate a little bit how it works. The figures inside are like a town clock in an old-fashioned European town square. And when I rotate the clock hand moves. So we've got the queen with her fan and her sword. So she's one of the reds, of course, and you can always tell who was who because they wear their red outfits or their gray outfits. And then we have Digger or Shovel Man. So many of the characters are identified by the item they're carrying or what they do. Now the Vizier or Horseman is very proud there. And then we have the Cleaning Lady or Pail Lady, because she always has her pail with her. We have Dandy, who's very proud of himself. And then we have the nurse with her first aid box, and the judge. And then we have the carpenter with his flowers. Now I want to show you about the way this book works. It's a accordion book. So it acts, it can be pulled out like it was, but it also can be flipped just like a regular book. And you can see the different pages where we have the title page. And then a beginning, Cranky Dandy is the first tune, Careless Sally, and then we have the Cotillion, Bank of Flowers, Hunting the Hare, and the Marquis of Granby. And then I wanted an 8th one because I wanted 8 characters. So Work Will Make Me Free is the last one. When I close it up, I can put it back in the clock, hoping that everything doesn't fall over. There we go, and then I can pull it out again for its exhibition. Welcome to the Grays encampment. Now, the Grays have a small little area they have to fit their living space into. And I've utilized the brown craft paper because when you wrinkle it up and everything, you get the sense of used, reused, make do. And that's what the Grays have to do. They don't have much. So they learn to deal with what they have. Now, the 2 characters right here where I'm standing, we have Specs. He has his little glasses on, and he's waiting with his pot, and there's a little spoon in it so that he can have his meal, which is being created by the cook. And she's cooking over an open fire. Specs is one of the earliest characters I created, and he's important in my fictive universe because in my mind, even though he's older and can't work very much, he's a valued member of the community because he teaches the stories and teaches reading. These are downtrodden people. The opportunity to learn is valued. So he has others often do the work for him because he does a different kind of work than they do. In these figures, they're all simply made. They have a wire armature, and then they're mostly paper wrapped and with some paint to stiffen everything up. And then I dress them. The grays have almost a uniform, I would say. The men all wear the pot on their head, and they have this jacket and their pants. And then the women, by and large, have a black skirt. They have a cute little beanie, and they wear the same jacket. So that's the cooking area of the encampment. What we're looking at right now is my musician descending the stairs into the encampment. In fact, there's a little room underneath the stairs, and she's playing a ukulele. And the reason she's playing a ukulele is because I play the ukulele. One of the really fun things about creating this world is you look at things differently. You get to make things in this miniature fashion that you may not have even considered how something was put together. And I enjoy doing that. So she's descending the stairs, and she's the singer. And anybody who has ever worked in a group, having music allows the work to go much more easily. So of course she's an important member of the crowd. And at the bottom of the stairs is Pale Lady, or she even has a name in the videos of Lily. And Lily is a cleaning lady, and she has her little bucket with her rag because she's busy working. And she's also a character that I'm very invested in, and she's gesturing up to the musician. Perhaps she's hailing her and saying, "Dinner's almost ready." But along with this, I just want to point out my ladder. So this ladder fits here in the corner. It's a little precarious, and much of the Gray's world is precarious. It's not necessarily safe. But in my imagination, the Grays can climb down the ladder and go off to another part of the exhibition when nobody's here. I created a backdrop, and once again, it's ink. And then I created these paper characters, which are, as you can see as I can touch them, they sit out from the backdrop about a half an inch or less because I wanted to create a theatrical progression. So we have the three-dimensional characters on the wharf street here, and then we have the background in which they would be situated, and then we have these ink characters that can be placed at various points of the backdrop. So it's scene setting, it's very theatrical. This whole show, New Gilded Age, is playing with various theatrical tropes. We have these kind of humble cottages or workstations. The Red Bader's graffiti is on the wall there, which comes about in the video. We see that. I have to say that one of the things I do over and over again, I've created these characters and they suggest narratives to me, but they also are characters that get utilized again and again in different ways. Here we have the vendor, and there's a Coles cooking her fish in her little vendor cart. And then this is my miner, and he has a cart that he is pushing along. It's full of rocks. Of course, they're not really rocks, they're paper rocks, in keeping with the fact. And then this is a pickaxe So, for breaking up the rocks. And then we have my stevedore, who's carrying by hand heavy boxes. And then behind him is one of the bully boys. When I created this world, originally I had the reds and the grays, and they were somewhat apart. It took me a while to figure out how to put them together in some fashion. When you're world creating, you don't know all the answers at once. And at some point, I realized if we have so many grays and we have so few reds, because the reds have all the wealth, but they have to control the grays. So the grays that chose to wear the red sash, have the brown belt and the bully club, are called my bully boys. They also have a rope ladder in which they can go down into the space. This rope ladder was terrifically time-consuming to make, but eventually it got made. And then their cage, the door can, oops, I better not move that, can close, and it has a locking mechanism if I wish to do that. Here we are visiting with the reds. Now the reds I situated in the 18th century. And the grays are in a more amorphous time, and their technology is early 20th century. So this is where the sci-fi part comes in, where I am mashing up two time periods. One of the reasons I situated the reds in the 18th century was because it was a period of time when there was a great deal of wealth for the very upper caste of society, and the people underneath were constrained to have very little wealth and a lot of work for the upper caste. I'm particularly thinking of France, which had a nice little revolution in 1789. But France is also interesting because it had a number of thinkers who were beginning to worry about the rights of humanity. Now, not to get too philosophical there, the idea with the reds is that they would have luxury. They also would have leisure. They would have wonderful costumes, and the 18th century is particularly good for their costumes. I really enjoy making each of the individual costumes. But here we see we've got a mixture of two reds and two grays. Now the little lady sitting in the back, she's the knitter, and she has her little basket of knitting materials, but she's also the attendant, or the lady in waiting, so to speak, for Venita. Venita is one of my favorite characters. She always holds her mirror because the most interesting thing she does is to contemplate herself. The other gray figure, she's called saltimbanque, which means street performer. So she's wearing sort of athletic gear, and she has a puppet show, and it's called The Bader's Puppets. And it has adventure, mystery, and drama. It also features red and gray puppets. And so she is creating a little puppet show for Venita, because Venita doesn't really have to do anything. She just can enjoy herself. And in fact, she doesn't even seem to be looking at the show so much. And Saltimbanque is very fortunate. She's been able to insinuate herself into the Red's palace. Now, the other figure we have here is my horn man. And he is a sort of warrior type. And he's taking a concerted stance. He's probably come down those stairs. He's going to be coming in and visiting with Venita. When I created the gray street scene, of course I had to create a red street scene. And their street scene is a much more expansive. Fewer characters are involved. And we see the large edifices that they inhabit. So I have on this particular street, we have a little cart where my hauler is hauling along the vizier. And the vizier is a horseman, and he has a staff that he holds, and he has very large teeth. He was the first character I created out of the entire series. I also made the ink drawings. I utilized the costumes for this from the artist Watteau, who's a French painter. I loved the way he painted people. Not everybody is from Watteau, but a number of them are. And then as we walk down the street, we see people conversing. We see my writer, who is my newest character. He's busy reading his book. And then we see Dandy, who is one of my favorite characters. He was in The Clock, but he is pictured in the video frequently because he, like Vanita, is very happy to contemplate himself. He feels super well dressed, and he's very proud of himself. So this is Vanita, and she is cut out of cardboard. She doesn't have to look exactly like the three-dimensional Vanita, or perhaps another representation that I might do of her. But she has to have her essentials, which is her fabulous outfit and her mirror and fancy hairdo. This was a kind of a big project because I decided I wanted to make a larger scale version of some of the characters. Popped up on this pedestal, which was what was so exciting about doing this in this show, was they become inhabitants or visitors to the gallery as well. So she was created in paper with ink and a little bit of acrylic paint, and then I cut her out and then traced out the size of the cardboard and then cut that whole thing out. In a certain sense, all those small figurines are little puppets. They're not articulated puppets, but they were all created with the idea that they would be in a video, and they had a little loop on the top of their head so that I could attach them and move them around. And of course, that's also how they're set up in the tableaus. But when I created the miniature puppet show that Saltimbanque is performing at the Palace, I fell in love with the puppets and the stage, and I wanted to make a full-scale one, recapitulating in a large scale the miniatures. And so we have the Bader's puppets. This closes up when it's not being used, but there we have Digger, one of my favorites, and we have the noble, and he has his sword and his fancy outfit. The puppet show that I created for New Gilded Age is called Treasure and Treachery, and it's actually based on in Japanese classical theater, no theater, they have little comic interludes because the performances run all day, and you need something to break up the tragedies that are happening in between, much like Shakespeare would have his funny bits. And so they have these things called kyogen. And the kyogen, generally there is a wily servant and a clueless master. So these guys are engaged, they want some treasure, but there's some treachery happening as well. And I created them for my hand, so it fits my hand. I've had other people try them on, and often it's very hard for them to get their hand in because they were really made just for me. And then I after I got my 4 little puppets made that were in the miniature theater, then I created the show and shot it and had a lot of fun making it. So here we have Lily, or Pale Girl, and she has her braid in the back and her black skirt and her bucket with her rag in it. And in the puppet show, I have a real high squeaky voice, but you know, I'm a really nice person, but I have to do a lot of work. It's nice to meet you. The Red Bader series is the world of the Reds and the Grays, and we see the Grays working, the Reds at leisure. We see the Reds, how they treat their servants. We see the resistance beginning to build, and then we also see violence, and how that is something I realize it's very difficult to figure out how to reconcile things, and that often violence occurs. And at a certain point in one of the videos, I used the clock title all over again, because this is something throughout history we have seen power go back and forth in different ways, and often violence accompanies it. What I like about video using the Reds and Grays is that I can give these various characters a narrative. And the narrative is not terribly set in stone. I want the viewer to have their own way of interpreting it, but I use a number of techniques, digital techniques, to allow my characters to be placed into backgrounds that I have photographed on my travels, either near or far.
Be good to us, and we be good to you.
To some degree, I have a shot list of things I know I want to incorporate, but I don't really know how it'll happen until I begin editing. And often it's the soundscape that helps me understand the emotional impact that I want. The factory sounds, the alarms, the operatic music, the dance music. Whatever it is, that kind of helps when I decide, oh, I need that sort of sound in it. It helps me understand how to make the characters move. I play some things on a MIDI board. I've collected sound effects that I make myself. I have sound files of all kinds of effects, and then I edit them together to get what I want. Thank you so much for spending the time with me to walk around the show, but I also urge you, if you would like to see more, the Cantor Gallery has a dedicated website for this exhibition. It includes the videos. It gives you some background about the whole project. If you really decide you're excited about the new Gilded Age, please check out the website and visit, and I'd be delighted that you would do so. Thank you so much.